Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. And today guys, I have the new build. This is for Clockwork City. This is going to be a healer build with a Nightblade, of course. Uses a very similar setup to the Argonian healer build I made at the beginning of PTS. But this one is actually tested, refined, tested, and refined again. And is now in a really good spot, unless they have the next update coming next week changes anything about the asylum staff, the asylum healing staff, or it changes anything about the way the gear sets that I'm using work. This is still going to be the most viable option for a Nightblade healer than anything else. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stats first, starting with the Max Magicka. 44 points in the Max Magicka, 20 points in the health, and the reason we do that is because we want to have that 18k health pool, so that way even if we're with somebody running Ebon Armor or not, we still have 18k health, and if we have Warhorn applied to us, it takes us to 20k. That's the main benefit there. The 39k Max Magicka is good. As you can see, this is a Dark Elf Nightblade healer. You could go with an Argonian, you could go with a High Elf, but after testing all three, the Dark Elf seems to be just a tad bit better than both of them. And it's not because they don't apply the healing effect, it's because of the way the class works with the race. Dark Elves don't get any health recovery, magic recovery, or stamina recovery, but neither does the Argonian. And they don't get any healing done. The thing that makes them a little bit better is the fact that they get a slightly higher stamina pool for blocking, dodge rolling, things like that. Now, I don't have mine set up in the appropriated food. I'm using Tri-Stat food from PTS. So my stamina pool is actually going to be about 11k, not 14. But it's still fine, and it still works out really well. So, as you can see, we have an 1845 magic recovery. If we were using the Night Mother's Brew, we would actually have over a 2k magic recovery, which is going to be perfect for this build. You don't want too high of recovery, and you don't want too little of a recovery. 2k is perfect for this build because most of your abilities are going to be about that much in casting. So, we have a kind of a low resistance, spell resistance, with a low physical resistance, but that's fine. We're not a Templar where we get extra spell resistance, and we don't get extra physical resistance or anything, so this build plays a lot on damage shields for that purpose. Alrighty, moving down here, we have the Antarnoch Mundustone. We are running 4 Divines, so the Antarnoch Mundustone doesn't give us the max amount, like if we were running 5 Divines, but it does give us the 309 extra magic recovery, which really plays in this build pretty good. Moving on, we have Major Prophecy because we do have Inner Light on both bars, not just one, but we do have it on both for a reason, and I'll get to that in a second. We're also running Tri-Stat foods. Night Mother's Brew, or Witch Mother's Brew, Witch Mother's Brew is going to be the better option, hands down, for this build. If you don't have Witch Mother's Brew, go for Tri-Stat food, and the reason I say go for Tri-Stat food over Dual Stat food is because Dual Stat food only lasts an hour. This lasts for 2 hours. So Tri-Stat food is a little bit better for that factor, and it does give you a greater stamina pool for blocking and dodge rolling if needed. Alright, moving down here, we have a 1638 weapon damage, or spell damage on the main bar, 49% crit. The high crit is really important for this build because of the way the healing works with this build. The higher the crit, the higher the heals, the better. Nightblades aren't like Templars, where they have a lot of heavy burst heals and very few heal over times. Nightblades have a lot more HOTS, or heal over time abilities, than they do burst heals. So having the greater critical heals on those dots, on those HOTS, is a lot better. So you want to have those critting a lot more than you are trying to crit heal or burst heal somebody. Alright. Moving on to the gear, we are running 5 pieces of spell power gear, all golded out. Now, if you're running on a live server, you're not going to have golded out gear. Most likely, you're going to have it purple, and that's fine. It doesn't reduce the stats and stuff too much, but getting it to gold as quick as you can is going to be the better option. You're going to want to go 3 infused down the helm, the chest, and the legs. You're going to want those infused. You're going to want the rest of it divines. Now, I am running a second set here, and the second set I'm running isn't Worm Cult. It isn't Sanctuary, because Sanctuary overheals. Worm Cult gives you good resource management, but because of the way this build works, and after testing, this is a better option, and that is Combat Physician. Now, the reason I say Combat Physician, I did this on my other build, but Combat Physician with the Nightblade, because one of their abilities will damage them when you cast it to give yourself minor mending. Getting that damage shield from it is really, really important, because you're going to want that damage shield applied to you. So anytime you critically heal yourself, you get the damage shield from Combat Physician. You want that up as much as possible, so that way you can use this major or minor mending ability to give you the heal. So that's why this set's there. It's mainly for your purpose. It does help to apply the damage shield to your tank or your DPS, if they need it. It does have a 6-second cooldown to be reapplied to somebody or you. So it's not too bad. It's pretty good. Moving on, we are running the Combat Physician Jewelry. As you can see, we have 1 spell damage, 2 magic recovery. I tried the reduced magicka cost ones instead, and actually found those to be a tad bit better when you run 2 magic reduction, or spell reduction. Spell casting is, whatever, spell cost reduction. I found that to be a little bit better, but that's only because of the staff we're using. So those are what we have here. 2 recovery, 1 spell damage. Like I said, all divines on the little pieces, on the big pieces, all infused. Moving down to the staffs, we are running 2 staffs. 1 resto, and the 1 resto we're running is the perfected Asylum Restoration staff. If you don't have the perfected one, you can use the normal one. You'll be fine. You only lose 3% on the reduced cost, and that's not enough to make a big deal. The reason why we're using this staff over a master staff is because of the reduced healing costs. Those reduced costs are so good. The nice thing about the master staff is it does give resources back to your allies, but at a very, very small amount. As you can see here, we're talking 258. That's just not enough to make it a big deal. And it is good, but at the same time, it's not great, because it doesn't do like it does for you. It doesn't apply, 258 per person. It just gives each person healed 258. And it's like, oh, well, that sucks. And no offense, it does suck. But it's a great staff. If you don't have the Asylum staff, use the Master staff. If you don't have the Master staff, use a crafted powered staff. You want your Resto staff to be powered, and there's a big reason why. It's because of all the healing that you do from the Resto staff side versus the other side. Alright, the next bar we are running a Maelstrom staff. Now, I tried both Nirnhone and Infused, and as you can see, I'm using a Weakening one, which reduces their weapon and spell damage by 348. It's a really powerful enchant. Works better on an Infused staff versus a Nirnhone staff, but the reason we're using the Nirnhone staff is to make up the difference for what we lose in healing power. Because you really need that healing power to make your heals still hit for good, especially when you're on the back bar. And I'll get to that in a second. The Weakening enchant is very important on this. This one works amazing. The damage shield one, you definitely want that on the Resto staff, because when you get done with that heavy attack, not only do you heal somebody, but it also applies that small damage shield to you. So it allows you to cast one of your skills that's going to harm you, but it's going to give you minor mending, and it's going to put a shield on you right before you cast it. So it's that benefit and that importance of it. That's why it's there. That's why you want a hardening enchant on this one, weakening on this one. So let's go ahead and take a look at the skills. And we're just going to go over the bars. I'm going to tell you guys, when you do any character you make, always unlock every passive to your class. Unlock all the passives to the weapons you're using. Unlock all the passives to the armor types you're using. And not all the passives, like if you're wearing medium armor, let's say with the light, you're going to do like dexterity, windwalker, and athletics, and that's it. If you're wearing one piece of heavy, you're going to just unlock the top 3. and that's it. Anything that requires 5 pieces or more, you don't need to unlock for those other sets. So unlocking those passives is really important. When it comes to like world skills, you know, if you're using a vampire or a werewolf or whatever, unlock those passives and then unlock your soul magic passives. Unless you're playing a thief character and you're doing a lot of like robberies and things like that, Ledgerman's really important. When it comes to guilds, Dark Brotherhood's not really important unless you're playing an assassin character. For story purposes, RP, whatever. Fighters Guild, don't really need anything from here on a healer except for the intimidating presence, and this is just for quest purposes. And then of course Banish the Wicked. This is very, very important on anybody. The reason why is because in most dungeon plays you're going to be fighting a lot of undead and Daedra, so you're going to get 9 ultimate whenever you kill one of them, any of them, and that's when you kill them. So you generate a lot more ultimate this way, and it's very beneficial to you. Alright, on the Mages Guild, I do have only Inner Light on my bar, and so because of that, I only have that ability unlocked. But I did go ahead and unlock all the passives on here because it doesn't matter. I want this reduced cost in Magicka and Health of my Mage Guild abilities in case I do decide to use one. If I use Inner Light, having that reduced cost really helps to make stealth characters, you know, visible kind of thing. But I'm not going to be using it in PvE. I'll probably use that in PvP. Increase the duration of your Mage Guild abilities by 20%. Very beneficial, especially if you're running like Entropy or you're running Equilibrium and you're using this for the Morph, where you exchange health for magic. I wouldn't suggest it, but you know, if you do want to get the resistance things, Entropy is the only one I would suggest ever using on a healer. And I'd probably go with the disintegrating one. Magic Controller increases your max Magicka and recovery by 2% for each magic ability slotted. This is really important for this, especially with the Inner Light and the fact that you are using 7 pieces of light armor. If you look here, I have a 28% recovery from this. This gives me 2%. That puts me at a 30% recovery because of it. So that's a really nice bonus for me because I'm a Nightblade. I get 15% on top of that. That's a 45% recovery rate, which is good. And then on top of that, I have my champion points, which are set to 14%. So now I'm at a 49% recovery rate. So that's kind of the benefit of having this setup this way, and why you want the Inner Light. So Mages Guild, you want that Inner Light. You want Magicka Control. You don't really need these other ones, but Persuasive Will is one I would definitely unlock. And then this one, if you're using Entropy. Like, definitely make sure this is unlocked if you're using Entropy. And that's because you can empower your next direct damage ability. So, like, if you do play the Nightblade, that empowerment really helps. Moving on, Thieves Guild, you don't need anything. Undaunted, you definitely want Undaunted Command and this one. Even though you're only getting a 2% increase in your stats, you don't need much more than that. Energy Orb is going to be a definitive thing you want to have unlocked, especially for this build. And moving on, Alliance, you only need the Assault skill, Warhorn. On the support side, you definitely need this unlocked. And you're going to want to have Barrier on one of your bars. Now, right now, I was testing the Veil of Blades, but Barrier is the one that you're going to want to use on this bar to get that 10% extra Magicka return. And that's going to help you out, especially when you look at it this way. You're, 2K already, and then when you add the Night Mother or Witch Mother's Brew, which gives you another 300 extra magic recovery, that's going to be more beneficial because that 300 is also boosted by the percentage values that you have. Let's go back in here. So yes, definitely make sure you have Replenishing Barrier. And I use Replenishing Barrier on this build, and I do use it a lot. Because each time you apply this to someone, it gives a really good damage shield. It doesn't heal them, but you apply a lot of dots or hots anyways, so you don't need to heal them over time. You're already going to be doing that. But it's the fact that when a ward falls off of somebody, you get 6 ultimate and 596 magicka. So this is going to help you keep your magicka pool replenished pretty good, and it's going to give you a good way to get ultimate gain for this build. On to the racials. Unlock all racial passives. Just unlock them. It's the best option. When it comes to crafting stuff, the alchemy, medicinal use, and provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. Those are the ones you want to have unlocked. So let's go ahead and go over the skills now. And we're going to start with the main bar here. Now, remember when I told you guys, you want to do a heavy attack with your Resto Staff first because of one of the abilities you're using is going to damage you. That ability you're going to be using is Healthy Offering. Now, it's going to do 6,751 damage to you, but it's going to apply a massive heal over time to your ally, and it's going to give you minor mending for 8 seconds. That means it's going to increase your healing done by 8% across the board. Any heal you cast is boosted by that 8 seconds. Now, this is not an ability you're going to be using right off the bar. You're going to be using it later into the fight. The main abilities you're going to be using most of the time is this one right here. And that's because of what your Resto Staff does. The Asylum Staff. When you use this ability, all your heals are reduced by 30%. And here's the thing. When you do this, that's even reduced by 30%. Not only is this reduced by 30%, this is reduced by 30%. This is not reduced by 30% because it's not. I'm not using the ward owl or the healing ward. This is reduced by 30% because it's considered a heal. This is reduced by 30%. This is reduced by 30%. Anything that has a heal attached to it is reduced by 30%. And so it's a really beneficial thing when you have this staff. Not only does it affect that, but I believe, and I haven't fully tested it yet, but we will check real quick. I like Light's Champion. No offense, it's like one of the best Resto Staff abilities, but we're going to go ahead and see if it does. And it does not reduce the cost of this one. It just reduces the cost of this one's health use, which is really important. So basically, you're going to want to start with this and then do that. So you're not wasting as much resources. You saw that instantly, man. Damage shield got applied, and my health was back to full, and I got Spell Power Cure with it. So that's the main reason why you're using this setup, is for the damage shield, like I said, from combat position. And then on top of that, the Spell Power Cure is going to give you extra spell damage. It's going to give your group extra spell damage, or weapon damage. And it applies it's going to apply no matter what, because you're applying a lot of hots or heals over time. It's going to be applying that all the time. So really good. So Combat Prayer, very, very, very important skill to have on your bar. You get good heal from it, and this is going to be your burst heal because you don't have a burst heal. This is your burst heal. On top of that, it also grants your allies minor resolve and minor ward, which increases their spell and physical resistance by 1320, and it grants them minor berserk, which increases their damage done by 8%. Now this only lasts for 8 seconds. So the best thing to do with this one is time it with Warhorn. Fire Warhorn, drop this. So that way you can give them the extra bonus of damage from that 15% critical damage. You give them 8% extra damage on top of that. So you kind of have to time it really well. It can be a pain at some points, but excuse me, guys. I personally like it. God, I thought I was over this thing, and I am. It's just, it's still affecting my sinuses really bad. So moving on, Healing Springs is your next ability, and this is bread and butter for all healers. I'm sorry, I didn't think it was all that good until I used it, and basically when you get that 30% reduced cost, or even that 27% from the Asylum Staff, and you go to cast this ability, it's almost like you're not spending any magicka to cast it, because you're getting that much magicka back. It's very, very powerful. Moving on to the next ability, we are using Ward Ally. Now the reason we're using Ward Ally is because we need that damage shield for ourselves because of this. Just in case we don't have one of our other damage shields available, we have this. And this is going to be a really powerful damage shield for us. It's going to be a very powerful damage shield for somebody else because we can apply it to other people. So really good combination, especially with that and the Combat Physician. Next up is Enter Light. This gives you max magicka by 5%, along with the 2% that you're getting from the Mages Guild passive. That's a 7% increase to your Mages Guild abilities, or your max magicka. But you're also using a siphoning ability from the Nightblade tree, and this is the reason why you need to make sure you unlock everything. You get Magicka Flood, which increases your max magicka by another 8%. A High Elf is really good for this build, don't get me wrong. They get the increased recovery rate, they get the greater magicka, The Argonian gets a little bit more magicka, 3% magicka, but they don't get the full, 9% like the Dark Elf. And the Dark Elf is literally only off by 1%. They just don't get the recovery. But what they do get is they get fire resistance. That fire resistance plays a lot on a lot of things, because not a lot of other classes get any kind of resistances besides the Breton. A Breton is a really good choice for this too, because you also get the 3% reduced cost and magic abilities. And that can tie in with the light armor passive. So either one of those races is really good. But Magicka Flood plays really well into this, because you have a siphoning ability on both bars. Now, moving on to the final ability, I already explained why we have this here, and you do use it. You will use it, not all the time, but you will use it quite a bit because of certain factors. Now, you can see this thing gives a 34,000 point damage shield to your allies. That means it mitigates 34,000 damage before it is removed, and it lasts for 30 seconds. It's the longest lasting damage shield in the game that you can get, and it is the most powerful damage shield you can get in the game. So it's a very beneficial one. It costs a lot of ultimate, so you have to generate a lot of ultimate, and that's one of the reasons why you're going to be drinking potions to keep your magic recovery going and to get your ultimate. You also have Soul Siphoner, which increases your healing done by 3% for each siphoning ability slotted. But you also have this. Casting a siphoning ability generates 2 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. So every 4 seconds, you are pretty much going to either be casting Funnel Health or Healthy Offering. And you're going to want to keep them up as much as you can to generate that 2 extra ultimate. You're also going to want to be doing a lot of heavy attacks with this build. Alright, moving on to the back bar, we have Funnel Health. A lot of people would say that the other one would be a better option, but Funnel Health, because it affects you and one other nearby ally and heals you both for 29% of the damage done every 2 seconds for 10 seconds, makes it for a better ability, because not only does it do damage, it heals as well. And you want that healing. And it's a really good, like I said, hot that you can apply to your allies. Next up, we have Energy Orb. Now, this is a heal over time orb. That means when you cast this, it goes across the crowd really slow. But as it's going along, it heals. And as it heals, guess what it can do? It can proc Spell Power Cure. So it can even do that for your allies. This is like a really beneficial one for you. And on top of that, you can see it got boosted from being cast. Well, watch this when I do this. Now it heals for 1,107. So it does boost it up quite a bit with the minor mending and the Spell Power Cure. Next up is another ability that a lot of people are going to say, why are you using? But that's because you don't use a lot of damage abilities normally on a healer. And we don't have any way of giving resources besides orbs. So we are using Refreshing Path. Now this is going to boost your health by a small amount. And this is why we had the blade of Veil of Blades on the other bar instead of the barrier. But after testing, the barrier still exceeds that Veil of Blades by so much more, and it's just so much better. This one, though, does a dot. It applies damage, and it applies a heal. Now, the heal is every second, and the ability lasts for 12 seconds. So for 12 seconds, you are healing your allies. Now, it is in a straight path, so it is just like if you put down Blessing of Protection or this Combat Prayer, but instead it is on a path. And as you can see, it's a pretty big area of effect. If you look at it here, it says it covers, it doesn't say how big it is, but it is literally the same size of this. So it's 20 by 8. That's a big area of coverage for a healing path. And I don't know if it's quite 20 meters because of certain things, so we can test it real quick. So we're going to put it down and just go to the end down here, and this is as far as it reaches right here. So it might not be 20 meters, it might be 12, but still 12 meters. You don't have to get super close. You put this down on your group along, you set this down, you throw out an orb, and you just stand there. You stand in this right here because you want that healing effect, but you want that applied to them. So when you do this and you switch bars, as I said, you're getting a lot of damage shields. You're applying damage shields not only to yourself but to your allies and other things like that. Now when you switch bars, you do lose some health. But if you look, you don't lose a big portion of health. You lose about 400, maybe 500. Yeah, just over 500, around 500 health, which isn't a whole lot. So it's not going to kill you to lose that 500 health when you switch to the resto bar. It's just, if you could get this up a little bit more, get it up to about 18k. You might sacrifice a little bit more magicka, but I would take this up to the 18k. The reason why is so that way you have that 18k health. So when you use Warhorn, Warhorn does its greater benefit. We are also using Elemental Drain here. This is a great debuff on your enemy. It applies Major Breach for 24 seconds. It also applies Minor Magicka Steal to the enemy for 24 seconds, when causing you and your allies to restore 300 magicka every second when you damage them. When you do a heavy attack on these guys, you're getting 300 magicka per tick. So you're doing tick, 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 300, and then you get that full burst of your resources when you do it at the end. So it's a really, really important thing. Moving on, we have Inner Light again for the max magicka, and then of course Aggressive Warhorn. Aggressive Warhorn is a really powerful ability for any tank or healer to have, and the reason why is because it offers max magicka, max stamina, and minor toughness, which increases your max those things by 10%. So it gives you the max magicka, max stamina, max health by 10% for 30 seconds. Very long lasting time. But it also grants major force, increasing the your critical damage done by 15% for 9.5 seconds. Very, very, very powerful ability. Now, before I go into champion points, I want to explain something. I play a Nightblade healer right now on live, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting this set up because I know it'll be the best option for me playing this build this particular way because it works so well. And like I said, I've done some pretty thorough testing, played in a few groups. You know, I went into the new trial to test it in the new trial to see how well it works. It works really well. You're not going to be a Templar. You're going to be a Nightblade. And you're going to have the same abilities the Templar does. You're just not going to be using a lot of the other things. Now, another ability I would suggest unlocking is in the support tree, and that is Purge. And I would go with Efficient Purge. Now, Efficient Purge is a really good one. The other one's just as good. It does a heal, so it also gets reduced by the Resto staff. But if you're going to put Efficient Purge on your bar, put it right here where Ward Ally is, because you still have the barrier here. And this is going to be an ability you're going to probably use more than Warhorn, especially with the new trials and all the damage that your characters take. These damage shields are amazing with mitigating damage from damage over time. So the barrier is almost more effective to have than Warhorn in that sense. But you still want Warhorn there just to boost everybody's stuff, and that's one of the reasons why you're going to be casting this ability quite a bit, and you're also going to be casting this ability quite a bit, is to get that 2 ultimate generation. You're also going to be using this a lot because you're going to want those reduced costs and healing. So you're going to be dropping this, you're going to be dropping this, you know, twice maybe. You might drop this and then drop this and then drop this, and then switch bars to put down your funnel health and your refreshing path so you get those heals over time going, and then of course energy orb to get those extra heals over time. There's a lot of benefits to the amount of healing that this thing gets for healing over time versus like a Templar who uses a lot more, you know, like uses Breath of Life for the heavy burst heals and things like that. You get a lot more dots. So just pointing that out. Now we're going to take a look at the champion points, starting with the red tree. We have 37 in Ironclad. The reason why we have 37 in Ironclad is because we don't stand up in the front fighting. So we don't need as much mitigation from damage. And the fact that we have all the damage shields, we want more points in our damage shield stuff. So 37 in here gives you 15% damage reduction from all direct damage attacks. We have 37 in Thick Skin, reducing the damage you take from damage over time by 15%. And remember, both of these do stack with Hardy and Elemental Defender, which reduce, as you can see, I have 43 points into both of these, and reducing the damage again by another 10%. So if it's damage over time, that's 25%. If it's direct damage, it is 25%. Moving on over here, We have 56 in the Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 20%. That is really high. Now, you can take this up to 24 with 75 points, but I would not say... I think it's 75. But I would not suggest doing that because it's almost a waste of points. Because you can take 14 points and put it into here, which reduces the damage you take from light and heavy attacks by 9.1. But it's just 9%. So that 9% does stack with this, and it stacks with Hardy or Elemental Defender depending on the type of light and heavy attack damage you take. So you basically take 34% reduced damage from light and heavy attacks, 25 from direct damage, and 25 from damage over time. But since, like I said, you're using so many damage shields, you don't really need that high of damage reduction, except for when you don't have a damage shield on. Moving on to the green tree, we have 23 into Warlord. This reduces the cost of Break Free by 10%. Now, I added some extra points, so I put it into Sprinter. This reduces the cost of Sprint by 7%. You don't really need it, but I didn't really have any other place to put the 11 points. So, I kind of did a dump thing. But I thought it would be the better option, because having the Sprint cost reduction allows me to sprint, you know, and not waste a bunch of stamina. Moving on over here, we have 75 in Arcanist, 75 in the Stenaxi. You can see both of these give you, this one gives you 14% magic recovery, this gives you 14% return on your heavy attacks, and with using a Resto Staff you get 30%, so that's a 44% increase of magic or return from your heavy attacks. And then when you incorporate the other return that you get base, it's another 30%. It's a 60 or 74% return. So that's 74% of your stamina or magicka you're getting back. It's crazy. Moving on over here, we have 23 into Tumbling. This reduces our dodge roll cost by 10%. Remember what I told you guys, like why you want the higher stamina pool is because of using it for dodge rolling and blocking. Well, I put 10% into here for that purpose, and I put 10% into Shadow Ward for the block cost reduction. I had 11 points left over, and it wouldn't have benefited me putting any of those points into either one of these. It's better to go with the sprint cost reduction. So that's why I did this. Alright, moving on to the final and last tree. This is the Mage's Tree. And my points are set up a lot different than most people's. And that's because I find it more beneficial this way. And I'll get to why. So 75 in a Bless, this increases your healing done by 14%. Now remember, we're using a powered staff for most of our heals. So we actually get a 9% increase on top of that. So that 14% is no longer 14%. It goes up to 26%. Or, yeah, 26% with that. I think it's 26. 4, it's 28%. So 28% increase in our healing done. And then on top of that, we have Minor Mending, which increases it by another 8%, which means that we go up to 36% healing done. And then we crit heal with all of our dots. So our crit heals, along with that higher healing done, makes our HOTS hit for a lot better and a lot more effective. Now, we have 56 into Elfborn. This increases our healing, critical heals done by another 20%. So we get a lot of extra healing done because of it. So our HOTS are hitting for more. We have 43 points in Elemental Expert, increasing our Flame, Frost, Shock, and Magic damage. So if you guys don't know, Resto Staffs do Magic damage, and I'm using a Shock Staff on the back bar, or a Lightning Staff, that does Shock damage, so I get 10% increased damage from those two. Plus, I also get the 20% critical damage. So, and because I have a high crit, my damage is a little bit greater than that of any other healers. We have 17 points into Spell Erosion. This just gives us a way to help do some extra damage, since most of our damage is going to be coming from our Restoration Staff, and you know, a couple things are going to be coming from our Lightning Staff. But you could do some other things with your Lightning Staff. You could use Wall of Lightning instead of Refreshing Path, and we'll get to that in a second. Moving on over here, we have 16 into Staff Expert. This increases our light and heavy attack damage done by 10%, we are a healer, but we do use light and heavy attacks because of, we use the heavy attack to get major mending, that kind of thing. This gives us a way to get that minor mending or major mending and do some damage as well. We put 23 points into Mastered Arms. This increases all of our direct damage done by 10%. If you guys don't know what direct damage is, when it comes to skills, this is a direct damage ability. The initial hit from this is direct damage. The initial hit from my light and heavy attacks is direct damage. So that's the main reason why I put those points in there, is to make those initial hits a lot harder, a lot stronger. So let me go ahead and show you guys this real quick. And I'm going to go over one thing real quick. If you want to change out the lightning staff, I would suggest going with a Staff of Lightning charged, or a Maelstrom Staff of Lightning charged. And the reason I say that is because your light and heavy attacks deal an additional damage to enemies in your wall of elements. That's when you put down your wall of elements, that extra damage is there. Even if you switch bars and do a heavy attack with this, it'll retain that 1000 on the initial hit of the heavy attack. Just the initial hit. So you get that extra damage there, which really helps. But that's only if you're playing in a dungeon and you want to help burst things down or do some damage to help them get the enemies down faster. I would suggest using a charged version over here with the Wall of Lightning. Otherwise, Nirnhone is going to be your best option. So let me go ahead and show you guys how this build works real quick in a kind of a combat scenario. It's not the greatest setup, but we'll just go ahead and just so I can show you. So you're going to start with putting that on the boss or the enemy. Then when you go into the fight, put down your wall of elements, do this, and then throw out an orb just to be safe. Pop the switch bars, drop your combat prayer, then do this, because you're going to want to get that health back as quickly as you can. And as I said, see the heavy attack damage that your character does? Doesn't do a whole lot, but that's okay because you don't have everything maxed out right now. Like Spell Power Cure is barely giving you a boost in your spell damage. So I need to cast this real quick so I can show you guys this. So I need my Spell Power Cure to go off. There we go. Now if you look, I actually have an 1896 here, and then when I switch bars I have a 2k. That 2k weapon or spell damage really does help on the lightning bar, because you do want to do some damage as a healer. So you don't want to focus so much on your resto staff unless you're trying to get resources. So if you're trying to get resources back, it's great. If you're not, your lightning staff's going to be a much better option because of the things that it does. And the fact that you can use damaging abilities while on it really helps. So, but yeah, this is a really powerful healing build when it comes to, not playing the meta of the Templar. Being a Nightblade healer is very powerful. They're super amazing at damage, like heal over times. The only class that comes comparable to the Templar when it comes to heals, besides the Nightblade, is the Warden. The Sork is good, but you have to use specific setups for it to make it work really good. The same thing goes with the DK. You have to use very specific setups with those classes to make them more efficient healers. With this setup, you get the benefit of these damage shields and all these hots, which basically compensate. Like the damage shields is like your burst heal. It applies this big damage shield, then you got these heals coming in for heals over time, which replenish their health really fast, because you have so many of them. You have like 5 or 3 to 5 heal over times going, and they just pour in. So it's a really cool setup. But that's pretty much it for the Nightblade healer, guys. If you guys like this build and like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can hit the subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy will see you all later. Bye.